Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching Today I Found Out. And obviously this video looks a little bit different because we're trying something a little bit different today. This video does require some props, which I have over here. You're gonna see more about those later. Let me know how you like this style of video. Basically, the video is gonna be all about why there are no Kinder Surprise eggs. That's these things. Why are there none of those in the United States? And just before we get started, I do want to say that this video is brought to you by Grammarly. Grammarly's writing app makes sure everything you type is easy to read, effective, and mistake-free. You can get started with Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/brainfood. Alright, so for those who are uninitiated, Kinder Eggs, they're a chocolate treat that's widely available throughout Europe, Mexico, and Canada. The company that makes them is Ferrero, and they're probably better known for this. That is Nutella. This is a little sample packet. In fact, I just went to the store to buy this. Oh yeah, that stuff's really good. What? Better. So Ferrero, they sell a whopping 1.5 billion of these eggs every single year, and they don't sell any of them in the United States because the eggs are totally illegal, although something of a black market does exist for them. So why is an egg that everyone in the rest of the world seems to love explicitly banned in the land of the free? In a nutshell, or in this case I suppose an eggshell, Kinder Eggs are illegal in the United States because they break a rule in the 1938 Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. This is regarded as a watershed in US food policy, as the act was drafted to protect the public from unscrupulous or sometimes just negligent manufacturers. It was made law on the back of several highly publicized cases of poisoning, most notably the 107 deaths of people, the majority of whom were children, in what became known as the 1937 elixir sulfanilamide incident. So it had long been known that the previous laws that the FDA were operating under, most notably the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, were woefully inadequate for protecting consumers, but the elixir sulfanilamide incident sparked major public awareness of the issue. So what exactly happened here? So despite the fact that sulfanilamide sounds like a terrifying chemical to ingest, it's actually a perfectly safe antibiotic when it's administered properly, and it was used among other things at the time to good effect for treating streptococcal infections. It was also later massively effective in reducing infection and mortality rates in World War II. However, in an attempt to create a liquid version of this drug, it normally came in either powder or tablet form, the lead chemist at S.E. Massengill Company, called Harold Cole Watkins, mixed it with diethylene glycol, commonly used today in antifreeze and as a solvent. So at the time it was known that this substance, diethylene glycol, was highly poisonous to humans, most notably causing kidney failure, but this had only recently come to light, and Watkins did not know this when he decided to use it in the company's elixir. He simply chose it owing to how well sulfanilamide dissolved in the substance, and because diethylene glycol tastes slightly sweet. In this case, even animal testing would not have been required to discover the substance was toxic. Watkins would have merely needed to do a surface-level look into the compound, with several previously published studies noting that the substance, even in relatively small doses, would cause kidney damage and potentially failure of the organ. But, well, no such due diligence, research, nor testing to determine the safety of such an elixir before putting it on the market was required at the time. Blissfully unaware that they were about to start selling a tasty tonic of death to their customers, S.E. Massengill sent out 633 shipments of the elixir in the autumn of 1937 to pharmacists across the nation. It didn't take long for disturbing reports to begin coming in, including news of deaths trickling back to the company, which resulted in them issuing telegrams requesting that the elixir be sent back for a full refund, though not disclosing to pharmacists the seriousness of the issue if they ignored the telegram. Now, all of this was capped by a short and truly heart-wrenching letter by one Marie Nidifer to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It described what happened in the days following administering the drug to her 6-year-old daughter, who at the time was suffering from a sore throat. It reads, "The first time I ever had occasion to call in a doctor for Joan and she was given the elixir of sulfanilamide, all that is left to us is the caring for her little grave. Even the memory of her is mixed with sorrow, for we can see her little body tossing to and fro and hear that little voice screaming with pain, and it seems as though it would drive me insane. It is my plea to you that you will take steps to prevent such sales of drugs that will take little lives and leave such suffering behind and such a bleak outlook on the future as I have tonight." As for Dr. Samuel Evans Massengill, who owned S.E. Massengill Co., he responded to many of the dozens of deaths caused by his company's negligence by issuing the following statement. "My chemists and I deeply regret the fatal results, but there was no error in the manufacture of the product. We have been supplying a legitimate professional demand, and no one could have foreseen the unlooked-for results. I do not feel that there was any responsibility on our part." Needless to say, when all of this came to light, the public were a little more than outraged with S.E. Massengill's somewhat brazen statement that his drug company wasn't responsible for making sure their products weren't simply poison at the recommended dose. And to add to the tragedy, it appears Harold Watkins did not quite have the clear conscience of Dr. Massengill, with Watkins sadly committing suicide not long after it came to light that his error had resulted in the deaths of over 100 people. In the end, the elixir sulfanilamide incident was the final straw, spurring the 1938 Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act to hopefully prevent such a tragedy from occurring again. Among other things, the act required that for the first time in US history, drug makers had to demonstrate to the FDA that drugs were reasonably safe before they could be marketed to the public. It also set standards for how different kinds of food should look and be packaged, and specified legal maxims for certain poisonous substances. These were often substances that were commonly added to food and drink at the time. Alright, so what does any of this have to do with these Kinder Surprises? So the act, it also included a small section explicitly banning the sale of any confectionery that contains either alcohol, except in limited quantities, as actually an amazing number of things we all eat every day actually contain very small amounts of alcohol, and it also banned any consumable product that has partially or completely embedded therein any non-nutritive object, except that this subparagraph shall not apply in the case of any non-nutritive object if, in the judgment of the Secretary as provided by regulations, such object is of practical functional value to the confectionery product and would not render the product injurious or hazardous to health. Phew, legal guys sure are wordy. So the exceptions mentioned there, if we actually translate them to English, are things like the stick of a Tootsie Pop, which is embedded in the candy item because it serves a purpose and otherwise has been deemed to not make the product dangerous. Kinder Eggs, on the other hand, and I can show you this, they're essentially, let me open this up, they are essentially a chocolate egg-shaped shell, and inside this shell, excuse me, it's really delicious. If you find a way to get one of these, not that I'm encouraging illegal behavior, or just a Kinder chocolate, you really should. It tastes as good as when I was a kid. So inside, you have this little capsule, and this is certainly different to the ones I had as a kid, so let me see if I can work out how to open this. Inside there is a toy. Looks something like this. Alright, and then some instructions. I'm going to assemble this at the end of the video, stay tuned. Now this toy, it doesn't serve a practical functional value to the confectionery and has been deemed by the FDA to be injurious, specifically as a choking hazard. That said, as many of the critics of this banning point out, countless children choke on things like hot dogs and large hard candy items every year, and nobody's calling for those to be made illegal. Or, more to the point, critics note that children are given chokeable toys all the time and occasionally choke on them, but nobody's calling for a banning of all toys that may get stuck in a person's windpipe. It's also noted by critics of this particular banning that the packaging, as with so many toys that are a potential choking hazard, have a warning on them not to give the Kinder Surprise to children under 3 years old because the toy inside presents a choking hazard. You can see that right there. Given that billions of these have been sold since 1974 when they were first introduced, it may leave you wondering whether any deaths have ever occurred due to choking. And the answer there is sadly yes. There are a handful of such occasions, in fact. It does appear, though, that these have never been to do with a child eating the egg and not realizing there was a toy inside. I mean, this thing is pretty large. It'd be a surprise if you didn't notice this inside your egg. More recently, though, in 2016, there was the sad case of a 3-year-old girl in France who choked to death on one of the toys contained within the Kinder Egg. See, these things, they're definitely smaller, definitely more of a choking hazard. Paramedics were able to resuscitate the girl, but she later died of brain damage caused by asphyxiation. Another recent case we found, somewhat illustrating the rareness of this thing, is one we found from 1985 in the UK, where a 3-year-old boy, Roddy John Breslin, choked to death on the wheels and axle of the toy inside the egg. As I mentioned, the toys are meant to be constructed, the smaller parts are pretty tiny. However, after investigation into whether this particular confectionery should be banned, the UK Department of Trade and Industry issued a report which, among other things, noted kids. The death did not occur as a result of the child biting into the egg, and it appears that eating the egg and swallowing the set of wheels were separate events. It is an unfortunate fact that the world is full of small objects which can cause the death of a child by choking. The tragic death emphasizes again the need for parental vigilance. Needless to say, in this case, they didn't choose to ban Kinder Surprise. That said, the supporters of the FDA's position on this one note that while it is true that kids are apt to choke on little toys, whether they're encased in a chocolate egg or not, they are perhaps more likely to do so if in the mindset of finding the toy packaged with a tasty treat. I mean, if they're young enough, they could potentially not even understand that the toy inside is not something that should be eaten. But of course, nobody is lobbying for banning Happy Meal toys or those decorations that go on birthday cakes. Unsurprisingly, this law, it's been challenged, and most notably by Nestle, who in 1997 introduced a product called Nestle Magic, which is essentially a not-so-subtle rip-off of the Kinder Surprise, which comprised of a chocolate ball with a plastic casing inside that contained a Disney character toy. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any of these to show you. These were just in my local store. The Magic ones, I guess with Kinder Surprises, we just don't care about them. When Nestle was preparing to launch this product, the FDA, they explicitly notified them that it was illegal under the 1938 Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act that we mentioned before. But Nestle, they disagreed, noting that the product was completely safe and should be considered one of the exceptions. Their position, it was backed by a report from the Consumer Product Safety Commission, who did their due diligence on the candy and determined that the non-edible item inside was not a choking hazard. Now, despite this warning from the FDA, Nestle decided to launch the product anyway, and a month after they did, the FDA contacted them about it. Surprise, surprise. Now, a spokesman from Nestle, who was then Vice President for Corporate and Brand Affairs, Laurie McDonald, stated that they decided to move forward with the product because we believe it's legal, we believe we have an honest disagreement on a technical issue. Nestle also attempted a political lobbying blitz to change the law, including trying to get Congress to embed wording in the Agricultural Appropriations Bill that would have made their product legal, with Representative George Nethicott of Washington State, whose district, by the way, just so happened to include a large Nestle plant employing hundreds of voters. He was championing the tweak in wording. So then a heated legal battle took place, with Mars, Nestle's chief rival in the States, leading the charge against Nestle. Although Mars said they were doing it to protect the public, they initially denied having anything to do with the campaign to confirm that the candy was illegal. It was only later that it was discovered that Mars was funding the case through public interest groups. Mars also initiated their own lobbyist blitz in order to convince the appropriate politicians that Nestle Magic was dangerous. Ultimately, Nestle, they were forced to take the product off the shelves, with precedents such as this making it practically guaranteed the Kinder Eggs are going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, not available legally in the United States. This has actually resulted in a small but thriving black market for the candy due to the toys inside being highly collectible, as well as the fact that it makes for a great candy to put in an Easter basket. In fact, United States customs agents note that they see a massive upswing in attempts to bring the candy into the country around about Easter. They also warn that attempting to do so, even if it's just for your own personal use, and you're not trying to use the eggs for commercial purposes, can see you slapped with a massive fine. And at this point, I'd just like to reiterate that I am not in the United States. I definitely bought these in Europe, where I live. So now let me give you an example of what happens if you do bring one of these into the country. There was one couple who was returning to the United States from Canada, and they were fined $12,000 for trying to bring 10 of them into the country. That's $1,200 each. That seems pretty crazy, and they were just going to be given to their own kids. Now, this said, such heavy-handed punishments, they are pretty rare, and in most cases, customs agents are just going to confiscate the eggs. However, according to a self-described Kinder Egg smuggler called Joe Wass, he has on one occasion been allowed to enter the US with the toys contained inside the Kinder Eggs. In this case, the customs agents in question actually made him eat all of the eggs, rather than just allowing him to discard the chocolate in the trash and take the toys. Was noted of this, they wanted to see me suffer, so I had to eat 20 chocolate eggs. So I really hope you're enjoying this video so far, and just before we get into the bonus fact section, and you can also see me assemble a Kinder toy for the first time in 20 years, I would love to be able to tell you about Grammarly. Now, Grammarly is something that I've been using, and the best way that I could describe it is essentially it's a spell checker on steroids. Now, I came up with that myself. I hope that's cool, Grammarly. I kind of realized that associating your product with steroids is probably not the best thing, but it really is. It's just basically, you know, those really basic grammar checkers you used to have in unnamed word processors where they'd underline it in red or green, and the green one, it was always like fragment, and I had no idea what a fragment was, or just useless stuff. Basically, Grammarly is what that wants to be. It's able to correct hundreds of different complicated writing errors, and it helps you fix them. So the next time that you actually do make a grammar mistake, you don't have to rely on that stupid green line or your own knowledge, which, I mean, I can rely on neither. Okay, so rather than describe it as a product on steroids, Grammarly told me that I had to say that they fix subject-verb agreement, article use, modifier placement, contextual spelling mistakes, phonetic spelling mistakes, and irregular verb conjugations. The reality is, I don't know what half of those things mean, but Grammarly, they don't care. They fix them anyway, which is pretty useful. I mean, probably the reason I don't understand a lot of this stuff is the very reason I love Grammarly, because it makes the many emails I send more readable and precise. And the benefit of this is, well, it makes me look smarter than I really am, and it's probably also appreciated by the people who are receiving my emails because they are far easier to read. All right, so you can join me and get started with Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/brainfood. Again, that's grammarly.com/brainfood. Link in the description below. And do remember that by going through that link and getting Grammarly, you do help support this show and keep videos like this one, or like our normal ones, or maybe like this one in the future, coming. Again, grammarly.com/brainfood. So let's get cracking with those bonus facts, and I'll try and assemble a Kinder Egg. So all is not lost for Ferrero. In fact, they've made steps to get a foothold in America. Starting in 2018, they're going to be offering a variation of the Kinder Surprise in the United States. Now, contrary to many a news report, this is not actually just a Kinder Surprise, and then the toy would be packaged separately. Actually, the egg-shaped packaging does actually have two separate halves. Now, I really didn't expect to find one of these when I went to the store, but I believe this is the product that they're talking about launching in 2018. It was just sitting there next to the regular Kinder Eggs. So apparently in here, we have two separated halves. Yes, we do. And in one side, there's going to be a toy. Nope, that's not the toy side. That's there's chocolate cream, a spoon, and two little wafer balls flavored. This is definitely the thing that's launching next year. That smells pretty good. It smells a bit sweeter than the Kinder Egg. Let me give that a try. Well, it's definitely a wafer ball. Oh, it's good. Oh, it's really sweet. Launching next year. By the way, I should mention, this video totally brought to you by Grammarly and not Kinder. But I mean, I think I'm selling this pretty good. That's pretty tasty. And then inside this end, there should be a toy, which seems to be some sort of... It's for a TV show that I don't know. It's a little toy. It's made out of metal. There you go. So obviously that's a pretty different product, but you can see why they're launching something so similar in the United States, because they can't do the original Kinder Eggs, which, you know, they can't do these things. So also, I did some reading, and apparently this thing, the Kinder Joy, was actually originally not created to break into the US market, but because there were places where the egg was melting before it could find its way into people's mouths, so they made this Kinder Joy instead. Stay tuned, Americans, 2018 apparently. Alright, so I'm going to assemble a toy. So they would always come with these instruction manuals. No messing around there. I feel like one of those YouTubers who does the Kinder Egg or toy unboxing and puts them together and then gets like 1 billion views a month. These two things together. Boom. There you go. And then apparently I stick these birds. Oh, look, you can stick them on different places. That's kind of sweet. Aww. You can just stick them on different places on this thing. I remember getting racing cars as a kid. Maybe they make these for dudes as well. That's a Kinder Egg toy. Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to check out Grammarly. Let me know if you like the videos like this. And that's all for today.